My name is Bianca Waters, 32 years old, and I never thought I'd have to fight my own family for the home I spent 7 years saving to buy. When my parents and brother showed up at my doorstep claiming they needed a temporary place to stay, I had no idea they were planning a full-scale takeover of my dream home. They assigned themselves rooms, rearranged my furniture, and told me to be grateful they were there to keep me company. If you're watching this now, let me know where you're from in the comments and subscribe to hear how I took back what was mine. Growing up in the Waters household was like walking on eggshells every single day. My father Jackson controlled everything from what we ate for breakfast to what time the lights went out at night. No decision was too small for his input, and his input was always the final word. My mother Diana wasn't much better. Instead of standing up to him, she enabled his controlling behavior, often telling me, "Your father knows best, Bianca. Just listen to him." My brother Adam was the golden child. 4 years older than me, he embraced our father's controlling nature and started mimicking it from a young age. When I was 12 and he was 16, he started monitoring my phone calls with friends, reporting back to our father anything he deemed inappropriate. By the time I was in high school, I knew I needed to escape this suffocating environment. College became my lifeline, my ticket to freedom. I applied to universities across the country, ultimately accepting a scholarship to a school 2,000 miles away. The distance wasn't accidental. I wanted to be far enough that weekend visits would be impossible. Those college years weren't easy. While other students were enjoying campus life, I was juggling 3 part-time jobs with my full course load, waitressing in the mornings, tutoring in the afternoons, and working as a night auditor at a hotel on weekends. Sleep became a luxury I could rarely afford, but the exhaustion was worth it. Every dollar I saved meant one step closer to never having to depend on my family again. After graduation, I landed an entry-level position at a financial advisory firm. The irony wasn't lost on me that I would be helping others manage their money when my own family had such unhealthy financial dynamics. But perhaps that's why I was good at my job. I understood the emotional complications of finances all too well. For 7 long years, I lived in a tiny studio apartment with secondhand furniture and ate ramen noodles more often than I care to admit. While my colleagues upgraded their apartments and cars with each promotion, I continued living well below my means. My singular focus was saving for a down payment on my own home. The day I signed those mortgage papers was the proudest moment of my life. No one from my family was there. They had scoffed at the idea of me buying property on my own. "Women don't understand real estate," my father had said dismissively when I mentioned my plans. Their absence at the closing felt like a victory in itself. My home wasn't fancy by any means, a modest 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house in a quiet suburb. But it was mine. Every wall I painted, every piece of furniture I carefully selected represented my independence. For the first time in my life, I could breathe freely in my own space. No one telling me what to do, where to go, or how to live. The peace was intoxicating. For 18 wonderful months, I lived alone in my sanctuary. I planted a small garden in the backyard, joined a neighborhood book club, and finally got the cat I'd always wanted. But my father had forbidden due to his allergies. Life was good. I was happy. Then the call came at 11:30 on a Tuesday night. My mother's voice was shaking as she explained that they had received a foreclosure notice on the family home. My father's business investments had been failing for years, but he had kept the severity of their financial situation from everyone. My mother had continued her lavish spending habits, oblivious to their dwindling resources. And Adam, now working for my father, had developed a gambling problem that further drained their finances. They needed a place to stay. Just for 2 weeks, they promised. Just until they could sort things out and find a new place. Despite our complicated history, they were still family, and they sounded desperate. I reluctantly agreed, setting clear boundaries over the phone. 2 weeks maximum. They would respect my space and my rules. They agreed to everything enthusiastically, thanking me profusely for my generosity. The next day they arrived with far more belongings than anyone would need for a 2-week stay. 3 cars packed to the brim with clothes, personal items, and even furniture. My stomach knotted as I watched them unload, but I told myself it was temporary. Just 2 weeks. I could handle anything for 2 weeks. Looking back, I should have seen the warning signs from the very first day. The way my father inspected every room, commenting on the potential of the space. How my mother immediately started talking about which curtains would look better in the living room. Adam's casual remark about converting the garage into his home gym. But I was still caught in old family dynamics, trying to be the good daughter, the peacemaker, the one who wouldn't rock the boat. That decision would cost me more than I could have imagined. The first boundary violation happened on day 3. I came home from work to find my carefully arranged living room completely rearranged. The sofa that I had positioned to look out at the garden now faced the television. My reading nook by the window had been dismantled, the armchair now across the room. Family photos I had never seen before sat on my mantle, replacing the travel souvenirs I had collected. "We just made it more functional," my mother explained when she saw my expression. "The way you had it arranged was wasting so much space." Before I could respond, my father chimed in from the kitchen. "And speaking of waste, do you realize how much money you threw away on this decor? These throw pillows are highway robbery. We could get the same thing at a discount store for a quarter of the price." I took a deep breath, reminding myself it was temporary. "I appreciate your input, but please ask before moving my things. This is my home, and I like it arranged the way I had it." My mother looked hurt. My father scoffed. And Adam, lounging on my couch, rolled his eyes dramatically. "Always so sensitive, B. We're just trying to help." That night, I heard laughter from downstairs. Following the sound, I found Adam had invited 3 friends over. They were watching a sports game on my TV, beer bottles and snack wrappers scattered across my coffee table. No one had asked permission. No one had even texted to let me know people were coming over. When I confronted Adam later, his response set the tone for what was to come. "It's not a big deal. We're family now. What's yours is ours, right? That's how family works." The 2-week mark came and went with no mention of them finding another place. Whenever I tried to bring up the subject, they had excuses ready. The real estate market was too expensive right now. They needed more time to sort through their finances. It would be silly to rent when they could just stay with family. By the 1-month mark, my anxiety was through the roof. I started making mistakes at work, missing details I would normally catch. My supervisor called me in for a meeting, expressing concern about my recent performance decline. I couldn't bring myself to explain that I was effectively homeless in my own home. 6 weeks into their stay, the takeover escalated dramatically. I came home one evening to find my belongings moved out of the master bedroom. "Your father's back has been giving him trouble," my mother explained, not meeting my eyes. "He needs the support of your mattress. We moved your things to the small bedroom at the end of the hall." I stood in shock, staring at the nearly empty room that had been mine just hours before. "You went through my personal belongings, moved my things without asking." "Don't be so dramatic," my father said, appearing in the doorway. "It's just a bedroom, and we need it more than you do. You're young, you can handle sleeping on a less comfortable bed." The next day, I discovered my mother had gone through my closet, organizing my clothes according to her system. Items I wore regularly had been packed away in boxes because she deemed them out of season or unflattering. Adam had taken over the garage completely, setting up what he called his temporary workshop for the business he claimed he was starting. My car now sat in the driveway, exposed to the elements. The kitchen became another battleground. My healthy meal prep containers were pushed to the back of the refrigerator to make room for my mother's elaborate cooking. When I mentioned that I preferred to eat my prepared meals during the work week, I was lectured about family dinners and tradition. "You're becoming so antisocial, Bianca," my mother scolded. "Family should eat together. These individual containers are just sad." Utility bills skyrocketed as my parents took hour-long showers, left lights on in empty rooms, and kept the air conditioning running at full blast even on mild days. When I mentioned the increased costs, my father dismissed my concerns. "Don't be so cheap. This is what it costs to run a household properly. If you can't afford it, maybe you shouldn't have bought a house." Neighbors started asking questions that made me uncomfortable. Was I renting out rooms now? Were my parents planning to stay permanently? Had I sold part of the house to my family? Each question felt like a knife twist, reminding me of how little control I had in my own home. Sleep became elusive. I would lie awake in the unfamiliar small bedroom, listening to my family moving around in what used to be my space. During the day, I was constantly on edge, wondering what would be changed, moved, or taken over next. The first major confrontation erupted when I found a box of my childhood memorabilia in the trash. Awards journals, photos I had carefully preserved over the years, all tossed away as if worthless. We needed the storage space, my mother explained with a casual wave of her hand. And really, Bianca, adults don't keep that kind of childish clutter. Something in me snapped. This is my house. You are guests here. Temporary guests who have long overstayed your welcome. My outburst was met with cold silence, followed by days of tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. But that confrontation was just the beginning of what would become a calculated psychological war for control of my home. The emotional manipulation began in earnest after my outburst. My mother started calling me at work crying about how the family was falling apart because of my selfishness and inability to forgive. Each call left me emotionally drained and unable to focus on my work. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us, she would say between sobs. We raised you, fed you, clothed you, and now you can't even share your home with your own family in their time of need. My father took a different approach. He would corner me in the kitchen or hallway for long lectures about family loyalty and my responsibilities as a daughter. Family is the only thing that matters in this world, he would say, his voice stern, as if speaking to a disobedient child rather than a grown woman. Blood is thicker than water. When everyone else abandons you, family will be there. But you have to earn that support through loyalty. Meanwhile, Adam was busy spreading his own version of events to our extended family. According to him, I was trying to throw them out on the street out of spite, refusing to help despite having more than enough room in my big house. The fact that my modest three-bedroom home was now bursting at the seams with 4 adults didn't factor into his narrative. Family group texts would ping throughout the day, discussions about my home that deliberately excluded me, plans for renovating our place, or complaints about things that needed fixing in the house. Never Bianca's house. Always the house, or our place, as if my ownership had been collectively erased. When relatives called, they would express disappointment in me. I never thought you'd be so selfish, Bianca, my Aunt Teresa said during one particularly painful call. Your parents gave you everything, and now you're treating them like strangers. The weight of these accusations was crushing. No matter how many times I tried to explain that I had worked hard for my home, that I had specific agreements with my family that they were violating, the narrative remained the same. I was the villain, the selfish daughter, the cold-hearted sister. My friends gradually stopped visiting. The tension in the house was too uncomfortable, and my family would make passive-aggressive comments whenever anyone came over. "Oh, we don't want to intrude on your important friendships," my mother would say dramatically. "We'll just hide away in our little corner." During a particularly difficult week, I started seeing a therapist who specialized in family dynamics. After hearing my situation, Dr. Marshall didn't mince words. "What you're describing is a classic pattern of emotional abuse and boundary violation," she said. "They're using your compassion against you, turning your kindness into a weapon." Her validation was both comforting and terrifying. Part of me had hoped I was overreacting, that this was just a difficult adjustment period. But hearing a professional confirm that this was calculated manipulation made me realize how serious the situation had become. The financial exploitation began subtly but escalated quickly. My parents and brother would forget to contribute to groceries and utilities, despite using the majority of both. When I would bring it up, they would promise to pay me back, but the money never materialized. One evening, I overheard my father on the phone discussing family accounts and shared resources. The next day, he casually suggested that we should open a joint bank account for household expenses. "It just makes sense," he said smoothly. "We're all living here using the same utilities, eating the same food. A family account would simplify everything." When I declined, citing my preference to keep finances separate, his demeanor changed instantly. "You've become so cold and calculating," he snapped. "Money has changed you, Bianca. You used to understand the importance of family." I started noticing mail disappearing, particularly bills and bank statements. When I confronted my family, they denied any knowledge, suggesting I must have misplaced them. But then I found a stack of unopened envelopes hidden in my mother's knitting basket, including several overdue notices. Adam's financial exploitation was the most blatant. He began borrowing my credit card for what he called emergencies. $20 for gas became $50 for drinks with friends. A one-time grocery run became regular food deliveries. When I canceled the card, he accused me of trying to starve him out. My mother's approach was more passive, but equally damaging. Expensive packages began arriving at the house, designer clothes and home decor items, charged to her nearly maxed out credit cards but delivered to my address. When collection calls started coming for her, they were now directed to my home phone. The financial strain was beginning to threaten my mortgage payments. Money I had carefully budgeted for my home was now being stretched to support 3 additional adults who contributed nothing. My emergency savings were depleting rapidly. At work, I missed an important client meeting because I was dealing with another family crisis. My supervisor called me into her office afterward, her concern evident. "Bianca, you've always been one of our most reliable team members, but lately something's clearly wrong. Is there anything we can do to help?" I couldn't bring myself to explain the full situation. How do you tell your boss that your family has essentially hijacked your life? Instead, I assured her I would get back on track, knowing I was making a promise I might not be able to keep. As the psychological and financial pressure mounted, I began to realize this wasn't just a difficult family situation. This was a calculated takeover. My family had never intended their stay to be temporary. From the moment they arrived with cars full of belongings, they had been executing a plan to claim my home as their own, and I had been playing right into their hands. The moment everything changed came on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. I had come home early from work with a migraine, hoping to lie down in the small bedroom that was now mine. The house was unusually quiet, my family apparently out for the day. As I passed my father's makeshift office in what had once been my home office, I noticed his briefcase open on the desk. A folder labeled "Property Matters" was partially visible. Something compelled me to look inside, a nagging feeling that had been growing for weeks. What I found turned my blood to ice. Inside were legal documents, printouts of property laws, and handwritten notes. One document in particular caught my eye, a draft deed transfer that would add my father and brother as co-owners of my home. It had been prepared by a lawyer, waiting only for my signature. My hands shaking, I continued looking through the folder. There were printouts of research on adverse possession laws, family residence rights, and establishing legal domicile. One highlighted section explained how extended residency could establish certain property rights, even without ownership. My phone buzzed with a text from Adam to my father, accidentally sent to our family group chat instead of directly to him. "Meeting went well. Lawyer says another month of residency strengthens our case. Keep things calm with B until paper's ready." The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. This wasn't a temporary stay during a family crisis. This had been a calculated plan from the beginning to take over my home. Further searching revealed a notebook in my mother's handwriting listing my valuable possessions with estimated prices next to each item. My grandmother's antique mirror, my collection of first edition books, even my cat had a dollar amount next to his name. I sat on the floor of what used to be my office, surrounded by evidence of my family's betrayal, and listened to a voicemail my father had left for someone named Stanley, who I assumed was his lawyer. "Once she signs the transfer, we can move forward with the renovation plans. She'll fight it at first, but Diana knows how to handle her. Always has." That night, I pretended everything was normal. I ate dinner with my family, nodding along to their conversations, while my mind raced with what I had discovered. I needed time to think, to plan. If they realized I knew about their scheme, they might accelerate their timeline or change tactics. For 3 days, I gathered evidence, taking photos of documents, saving text messages, and recording conversations whenever possible. I made copies of all my mortgage documents, proof of payments, and the original deed. I moved these copies to a secure location outside my home, along with irreplaceable personal items I couldn't bear to lose. On the 4th day, they made their move. My father called a family dinner to discuss important matters. As we sat around the dining table I had carefully chosen when I first moved in, he cleared his throat ceremoniously. "Bianca, we've been thinking about our situation." He began, his tone deliberately reasonable. "It's clear that this arrangement is working well for all of us. We're together as a family should be." My mother reached across the table to take my hand. "Sweetheart, at your age, you shouldn't be living alone anyway. A woman needs her family around her." Adam nodded sagely. "And let's be honest, sis. This place is too big for just you. It makes sense to make this official." My father pulled out the document I had already seen in his briefcase. "We've had our lawyer draw up some simple paperwork. It just adds our names to the deed, making this officially a family home. Nothing really changes except we all have security." "Security," I repeated, my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. "You mean ownership of a house you didn't pay for?" My father's expression hardened slightly, but he maintained his reasonable facade. "We're family, Bianca. Family property is shared property. Your grandfather helped me buy my first house. I'm just continuing the tradition." "By forcing me to give you my home?" I asked, still keeping my voice calm. "Not forcing." My mother interjected, her eyes wide with practiced innocence. "We're asking you to do the right thing for your family." "And if I refuse?" The temperature in the room seemed to drop. My father's mask of reasonableness slipped for just a moment, revealing the calculating man beneath. "Then things might get legally complicated. We've established residency here now. We have rights." Adam leaned forward, his voice taking on a threatening edge. "It would be a shame to have to go to court over this, Bianca. Family disputes get ugly. People hear things. Your reputation at that fancy firm might suffer." The implied threat hung in the air between us. They were prepared to drag me through a legal battle to damage my professional reputation, to make my life hell if I didn't comply with their demands. My mother delivered the final blow, her voice soft, but her words sharp as knives. "You didn't think you'd live here alone, did you, Bianca? A big house like this, all by yourself. That's not how family works." In that moment, staring at their expectant faces, I made my decision. I would not be bullied out of my own home. I would not sign away what I had worked so hard to achieve. And I would no longer allow these people, blood relatives, or not to manipulate and control me. The confrontation that followed would change everything. The morning after the confrontation, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. This wasn't a battle I could fight while trying to maintain my professional responsibilities. My home and my freedom were at stake, and I needed to focus entirely on protecting both. My first call was to Angela Martinez, a real estate attorney recommended by a colleague. Her no-nonsense attitude was exactly what I needed as I explained my situation. "Unfortunately, I see this kind of family property dispute more often than you might think," Angela said after I finished my story. "The good news is that the law is firmly on your side. The bad news is that family members who have established residency have certain protections even without ownership rights." I sent her copies of all my documentation, the mortgage in my name, only proof of every payment I had made, without contribution from my family, the original deed with only my signature, and the property tax statements addressed solely to me. "This is excellent documentation," Angela confirmed after reviewing everything. "They have absolutely no legal claim to ownership, but removing them might take some time due to tenant protection laws. Even without a formal lease, their extended stay establishes certain rights." We developed a detailed legal strategy focusing on formal eviction notices that would start the clock on their required departure. Angela also advised me to document any harassment threats or property damage that might help expedite the process. My next call was to a financial advisor to protect my assets. We froze my credit to prevent unauthorized applications, changed all my banking passwords, and set up alerts for any unusual activity. I moved most of my savings to a new account at a different bank, one my family had no knowledge of. The same day, I consulted with a security expert who specialized in home protection. He recommended changing locks once the eviction was complete, installing security cameras, and updating my alarm system. For now, he helped me secure my remaining personal items with a biometric safe that only I could access. The emotional toll was perhaps the hardest part to manage. I scheduled an emergency session with Dr. Marshall, my therapist, who helped me process the profound betrayal I was experiencing. "What you're feeling is perfectly normal," she assured me. "Your family has violated not just your physical boundaries by taking over your home, but your emotional and psychological boundaries as well. The anger hurt and sense of betrayal are all appropriate responses." She helped me develop coping strategies for the difficult days ahead, emphasizing self-care and emotional boundaries. "Remember that you can love your family from a distance," she told me. "Love doesn't mean allowing yourself to be exploited or abused." As I built my professional support network, I also reached out to personal connections who might understand my situation. My Aunt Sophia, my mother's sister who had been estranged from the family for years, responded immediately to my email. "I've been waiting for this call," she said when we spoke on the phone. "Your mother and father did something similar to me years ago when I was going through my divorce. They moved in temporarily and tried to claim partial ownership of my condo. It's their pattern, Bianca. I'm so sorry you're going through this." Aunt Sophia's validation was healing in a way I hadn't expected. For so long, I had thought I was alone in experiencing my family's manipulative behavior. Knowing that others had seen through their facade helped me feel less crazy, less like the villain they were painting me to be. I also confided in two trusted colleagues, Sarah and Michael, who offered both emotional support and practical help. Sarah, who had gone through a contentious divorce involving property disputes, shared resources that had helped her. Michael, whose spare bedroom was currently unoccupied, offered it as a place to stay if things became too tense at home. A surprise ally emerged in my next-door neighbor, Mrs. Fitzgerald, an observant 80-year-old who had noticed the changes in my household. When I explained the situation while collecting my mail one day, her eyes narrowed with recognition. "I thought something wasn't right," she said, inviting me in for tea. "Your brother was telling everyone on the street that the house was now family property and that you were struggling financially, said they moved in to help you keep the place." Never sat right with me. Mrs. Fitzgerald's revelation that my family had been actively spreading lies about me throughout the neighborhood was infuriating but also valuable information. It confirmed the extent of their campaign against me and gave me insight into what narrative they were constructing. With my support network established, I turned to practical preparations. I installed a small safe in my car's trunk to keep important documents secure and away from the house. I set up a post office box for all important mail and changed the delivery addresses for all my accounts. I joined an online support group for adults dealing with family financial abuse, where I found both emotional support and practical advice from others who had experienced similar situations. Their stories helped me recognize patterns in my family's behavior and anticipate potential next moves. At work, I had a difficult but necessary conversation with my supervisor explaining enough of my personal situation to account for my recent performance issues without going into uncomfortable detail. To my relief, she was understanding and offered flexible hours while I sorted out my home situation. I also installed security cameras in my bedroom and the common areas of the house, making sure they were discreet enough that my family wouldn't notice them. These would serve both as protection and as documentation of any inappropriate behavior. With each step, I felt my power returning. For too long, I had been reacting to my family's maneuvers, always on the defensive. Now I was taking back control, preparing for the confrontation that would determine who would ultimately remain in my home. What I didn't realize was that my family had been watching my movements closely. They had noticed my unusual absence from work, the locked bedroom door, the private phone calls, and they were preparing their own countermoves in what was becoming an all-out war for my home. The next phase would test everything I had prepared for and reveal just how far my family was willing to go to take what was mine. With my legal and support systems in place, the time came to formally begin the eviction process. Angela, my attorney, prepared the necessary paperwork, and I scheduled the delivery of the formal notice for a Friday morning when all three family members would be at home. The night before, I barely slept, my mind racing with scenarios of how they might react. Would there be tears, rage, threats? I prepared myself for all possibilities, rehearsing calm responses to emotional outbursts. When the courier arrived at 9 in the morning with the legal documents, the atmosphere in the house shifted immediately. My father snatched the envelope, his face darkening as he read the contents. My mother burst into dramatic sobs that seemed more performative than genuine. Adam stormed around the living room, kicking furniture and muttering threats. "This is how you treat family," my father finally said, his voice dangerously quiet. "With legal notices and eviction papers." "You left me no choice," I replied, maintaining the calm demeanor Dr. Marshall and I had practiced. "You're in my home without permission, attempting to take legal ownership through manipulation. This is simply me protecting what's legally mine." "We'll fight this," Adam snarled, waving the papers in my face. "We've been living here for months. We have rights." "Yes, you do," I acknowledged. "That's why I'm following the legal process for eviction rather than changing the locks today. You have 30 days to find alternative housing as specified in those documents." My mother's sobs escalated to wailing. "My own daughter throwing us onto the street after everything we've sacrificed for you." "I offered you temporary shelter during a difficult time," I reminded her. "You turned that offer into an attempt to take my home. Those are your actions, not mine." My father's expression changed from anger to calculation. "You really want to do this the hard way, Bianca? We can make things very difficult for you." "I'm aware of that," I said steadily, "but I'm prepared for difficult. What I'm not prepared to do is give up my home to people who betrayed my trust." The conversation devolved from there, with threats, emotional manipulation, and attempts to make me doubt my decision. But for the first time since they had moved in, I stood firm in the face of their tactics. Each accusation and threat only confirmed that I was making the right choice. Over the next few days, my family shifted tactics. My father began making phone calls to my extended family, painting himself as the victim of an ungrateful daughter. My phone filled with voicemails from relatives I rarely spoke to, all expressing disappointment in my cruel behavior. My mother took a different approach, attempting to recruit my friends and colleagues to her cause. She found my work contact list and began calling people sobbing about being homeless and begging them to reason with me. Fortunately, my earlier conversations with trusted colleagues had prepared them for these calls and most recognized the manipulation for what it was. Adam's response was the most concerning. His behavior became increasingly erratic and aggressive. He would stand outside my bedroom door late at night, sometimes jiggling the handle or making threatening comments. The security cameras I had installed captured him going through my mail, searching my belongings when I wasn't home, and even attempting to access my computer. One particularly disturbing incident occurred when I returned home to find Adam and two unfamiliar men measuring the living room and discussing renovation plans. When confronted, Adam claimed they were friends helping with some home improvements. The security footage told a different story, capturing their conversation about how to document established residents and strengthen position for court. The police became involved after Adam's threatening behavior escalated to property damage. During an argument about his continued presence in the house, he punched a hole in my living room wall and threatened to make me sorry if I continued with the eviction. The officers who responded took statements and filed a report, but explained that without physical threats to my person, their options were limited. Still, the police report established an important legal record of escalating tensions, which Angela advised would be helpful in expediting the eviction process if necessary. Following this incident, I obtained a temporary restraining order against Adam, requiring him to maintain a certain distance from me within the home and prohibiting further threats or intimidation. With Adam temporarily neutralized by legal consequences, my parents intensified their own campaign. They began posting on social media about their homeless situation, carefully crafting a narrative that painted me as a heartless daughter throwing elderly parents out of her home. They conveniently omitted the fact that they were in their early 60s in good health and had substantial savings they had hidden during their financial crisis. My brother joined the social media offensive, posting childhood photos with captions like, "Remember when family meant something to you, Bianca," and "Some people forget where they came from when they get a little money." Distant cousins and family friends I hadn't spoken to in years left comments expressing shock at my alleged behavior. The public pressure was difficult to bear, But I reminded myself that the truth was on my side. I had documentation, legal standing, and the support of those who truly mattered in my life. The court of public opinion might temporarily turn against me, but the actual court would recognize my clear legal rights to my property. As the legal process moved forward, I made a surprising discovery that would change everything. While gathering additional documentation for Angela, I hired a private investigator to look into my family's current financial situation. What he uncovered was shocking. My father had not, in fact, lost everything in failed business ventures as he had claimed. He had systematically moved assets into hidden accounts and shell companies to avoid creditors. The foreclosure on their family home had been strategic rather than necessary part of a plan to shield assets while creating a convincing story of financial hardship. Even more disturbing, the investigator discovered loan applications my father had submitted, using my address as his primary residence, some dated just days after moving in with me. He had been using my good credit and address to rebuild his financial portfolio, while simultaneously attempting to take ownership of my home. My brother's gambling debts were real, but so were his winnings, which he had been hiding from both our parents and me. He had been playing both sides, presenting himself as desperately broke, while actually accumulating substantial cash reserves. And my mother, while aware of at least some of this deception, had her own financial secrets. She had opened multiple credit accounts using variations of her name to avoid detection, racking up charges for luxury items while claiming poverty. The investigator also uncovered communications between my father and his former business partner, revealing tensions over potentially fraudulent business practices. This partner, Jonathan Mercer, might have information that could be leveraged in my favor. Armed with this new information, I arranged a meeting with Jonathan, who confirmed my suspicions. My father had engaged in questionable accounting practices for years, often using family members' names and information without their knowledge. Jonathan had distanced himself from the partnership when he discovered these activities, but had kept documentation as insurance. "I'm not surprised he's trying to take your house," Jonathan told me over coffee. "It's his pattern. Create a crisis move-in with someone vulnerable, then gradually take control of their assets. He did it to his own brother back in the 90s. Jonathan agreed to provide statements and documentation that would help establish my father's pattern of financial manipulation, strengthening my case for immediate eviction based on fraudulent pretenses. With each piece of evidence I gathered, with each ally I secured, I felt my position strengthening. My family had underestimated me, assuming I would cave under pressure, as I had so many times in childhood. They had not anticipated that the independent woman who had built her own life would fight back with every resource at her disposal. As the 30-day eviction notice neared its conclusion, tensions in the house reached a breaking point. My family sensed that their plan was unraveling, that their carefully constructed narrative was falling apart in the face of documented evidence and legal process. What happened next would bring everything to a head in a way none of us could have predicted. The final confrontation began at dawn on a Tuesday, exactly 28 days after the eviction notice was served. I awoke to the sound of raised voices downstairs, unusual for so early in the morning. Checking my security camera feed on my phone, I saw my father in a heated argument with someone at the front door. That someone was a representative from the Internal Revenue Service, accompanied by a local police officer. They had questions about certain financial disclosures and suspected tax evasion tied to my address. As I quickly dressed and made my way downstairs, another vehicle pulled into my driveway. This time it was an investigator from the bank that held my father's business loans, responding to information they had received about potentially fraudulent applications. My father's face had lost all color. He kept glancing at me, clearly wondering if I had orchestrated this convergence of authorities. In truth, I had set certain wheels in motion by reporting the fraudulent use of my address, but the timing was coincidental. Before any of us could fully process what was happening, Adam burst through the front door, wild-eyed and disheveled. "They're after me," he gasped, oblivious to the officials already in the living room. "The casino's sending guys to collect. I need money now." The tableau would have been almost comical if it weren't so serious. My father standing frozen before tax authorities, my brother unwittingly confessing to gambling debts in front of witnesses, and my mother coming down the stairs in her robe still unaware of the unfolding disaster. "What is going on here?" she demanded, then stopped short when she saw the officials. Before anyone could answer, another knock came at the door. This time it was a courier with legal papers from Jonathan Mercer's attorney, serving notice of a civil suit against my father for business fraud and embezzlement. As the morning progressed, the extent of my family's financial house of cards became increasingly clear. The tax authorities had questions about businesses registered to my address without my knowledge. The bank investigator had documentation of loan applications listing assets that didn't exist. And the courier revealed that multiple former business associates were coming forward with similar complaints against my father. My father, who had always maintained absolute control, was unraveling before my eyes. His attempts to explain away the mounting evidence grew increasingly desperate and contradictory. "This is all a misunderstanding," he kept saying, his authoritative voice now shaking. "I can explain everything." But he couldn't. Not to the tax authorities with their detailed records. Not to the bank investigator with loan applications in his own handwriting. And certainly not to me watching the facade of the controlling patriarch crumble in real time. My mother, always the enabler, attempted to shift blame. "This is your fault, Bianca," she hissed when the official stepped outside to make calls. "If you had just signed over the house like we asked, none of this would be happening." Her words only confirmed what I had finally come to understand. My family saw me not as a person to love, but as a resource to exploit. My value to them was measured in what they could take from me, not in who I was. Adam, realizing the severity of the situation, attempted to flee. He ran upstairs to gather his belongings, only to find his access to my bedroom safe, where he had apparently hidden cash, was now biometrically locked. His frustrated shout echoed through the house. When he returned downstairs, his demeanor had changed from panic to desperate negotiation. "Bianca, we can work something out," he said urgently. "I know I've been tough on you, but we're still family. Help me out of this jam, and I swear I'll never ask for anything again." The irony of his plea wasn't lost on me. After months of intimidation and threats after attempting to steal my home and destroying my peace, he now wanted my help. The old Bianca might have given in, might have tried to fix things for everyone at her own expense. But that person was gone. "I can't help you, Adam," I said quietly. "Your gambling debts are your responsibility, just like this house is my responsibility and my property." His face contorted with rage. "You ungrateful little—" He began stepping toward me menacingly. "I wouldn't—" I interrupted calmly. "The restraining order is still in effect, and there are multiple witnesses present." As the morning turned to afternoon, more officials arrived. My father's financial deceptions had apparently been more extensive than even I had suspected. What started as an investigation into fraudulent use of my address had uncovered a years-long pattern of tax evasion, falsified loan applications, and business fraud. My mother, seeing the writing on the wall, made one last attempt at manipulation. Taking me aside in the kitchen, her eyes filled with practiced tears, she admitted what I had already discovered. "Yes, we plan to take the house," she confessed, as if the admission itself should earn forgiveness. "But only because we needed security in our retirement. You're young, you can start over. We don't have that luxury." "You had options," I replied, unmoved by the performance I had seen countless times before. "You chose deception and manipulation instead of honesty. You chose to try to take what I worked for rather than address your own financial mistakes." "We're still your parents," she insisted. "Family forgives." "Yes," I agreed, "but forgiveness doesn't mean allowing the same harm to continue. I can forgive you while still requiring you to leave my home." By evening, the full extent of the collapse was apparent. My father was facing multiple investigations and potential criminal charges. My brother's gambling creditors knew exactly where to find him now. And my mother's secret credit accounts had been flagged for review due to suspicious activity patterns. They had lost everything not because of me, but because their house of cards had finally collapsed under the weight of their own deceptions. The timing of the eviction notice had simply accelerated a process that was already in motion. As I stood in my kitchen that night, watching my family frantically packing their belongings, I felt no joy in their downfall. There was sadness for what might have been if they had chosen honesty over manipulation, love over exploitation. But there was also profound relief knowing that the battle for my home was over. 3 days later, with police present to ensure a peaceful transition, my family removed the last of their possessions from my house. My father didn't meet my eyes as he carried boxes to their rented moving truck. My mother attempted one last guilt trip, which fell flat against my new emotional boundaries. Adam glared, but kept his distance, the restraining order still in effect. As their truck pulled away from the curb, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders that I hadn't even realized I was carrying. My home was mine again. The space I had created with such care and pride was returned to my control. That night, I slept in my own bedroom for the first time in months, in the house that was unquestionably mine alone. Standing in my empty living room after my family's departure felt surreal. The space seemed both smaller and larger without their overwhelming presence. Traces of them remained everywhere. A scratch on the hardwood floor from Adam's careless furniture. Moving a water stain on the coffee table from my mother's neglected plants. The lingering scent of my father's cologne in what had been my office. The physical process of reclaiming my space began immediately. I hired professional cleaners for a deep clean of the entire house, watching with satisfaction as years of my family's energy was scrubbed away. Carpets were steam-cleaned, walls repainted, and damaged items repaired or replaced. My first major change was reclaiming the master bedroom. I spent an entire weekend washing every textile, rearranging furniture to my preference, and creating a peaceful sanctuary that felt entirely mine again. Sleeping in my own bed that first night with my cat purring beside me, I felt a profound sense of peace I hadn't experienced in months. With the help of a locksmith, I changed every lock and security code in the house. The symbolic weight of this simple act was enormous. For the first time in months, I controlled who could enter my space. The security system was upgraded with new cameras and sensors, giving me both physical security and peace of mind. The security expert I had consulted earlier returned to install additional features, creating a home that was truly my fortress. As I moved through each room, I made deliberate choices about what to keep, what to change, and what to remove entirely. The dining table where my family had presented their ultimatum was sold and replaced with a beautiful handcrafted piece I had always admired, but previously couldn't afford. The couch where Adam had lounged with his friends was donated, making way for a comfortable sectional that better suited my taste. Some spaces required more extensive reclamation. The small bedroom I had been relegated to was transformed into a meditation and yoga space, replacing negative associations with positive new energy. The garage, which Adam had claimed as his workshop, became my personal creative studio for photography and painting hobbies I had neglected during the occupation. The psychological reclamation was more challenging than the physical. Even with my family gone, I sometimes found myself tensing when I heard a car door outside, expecting them to return. I would catch myself walking quietly through my own home, a habit developed to avoid confrontation during their stay. Dr. Marshall helped me work through these lingering effects, guiding me through exercises to reclaim my sense of security and ownership. Your body is still carrying the trauma of that experience, she explained. It will take time for your nervous system to recognize that the threat is gone. One particularly healing ritual involved walking through each room of my house, stating aloud, "This is my space. I am safe here. I choose who enters." Simple but powerful, this daily practice helped rewire my brain to recognize my home as truly mine again. My support network remained crucial during this transition. Aunt Sophia visited for a week, her presence filling the house with warmth and authentic family connection. She helped me rearrange furniture, choose new paint colors, and most importantly, shared stories that helped me understand the generational patterns of control and manipulation in our family. "Your grandmother was the same way with your mother," she revealed one evening as we shared wine on my newly reclaimed patio. "The control, the emotional manipulation. Diana didn't break the cycle with you, but you, Bianca, you're breaking it for good." Sarah and Michael, my colleagues who had supported me through the worst of the crisis, organized a reclaiming party once the house was fully restored. Friends filled my home with laughter, good food, and positive energy, helping to create new joyful memories in spaces that had been sources of tension. Mrs. Fitzgerald, my observant neighbor, became a regular visitor for afternoon tea. She would bring homemade cookies and neighborhood updates, her presence a comforting reminder of the community support that had helped me through the darkest times. The financial aftermath required attention as well. Working with financial advisors, I secured my accounts and credit instituting strict monitoring protocols to ensure my family couldn't use my information again. The damage they had done to my savings was significant but not catastrophic. With careful planning, I developed a strategy to rebuild my emergency fund and continue meeting my mortgage obligations. Professionally, I gradually regained my focus and performance. My supervisor, who had been understanding throughout the crisis, nominated me for a leadership program within the company. The confidence she showed in me helped restore my professional self-image, which had been damaged by months of family undermining. My relationship with the concept of family underwent a profound transformation. Through therapy and support groups, I came to understand that family connections should be based on mutual respect and love, not obligation and control. Biology created our relationships, but it didn't have to define them going forward. I maintained minimal contact with my parents and brother as they dealt with the legal and financial consequences of their actions. Occasional text messages confirmed they were alive and dealing with their situations, but I established firm boundaries around any attempts to restart old patterns. Instead, I focused on building my chosen family friends, supportive colleagues, and relatives, like Aunt Sophia, who demonstrated healthy relationship patterns. These connections, based on genuine care rather than obligation, became the foundation of my new understanding of family. 6 months after reclaiming my home, I decided to host Thanksgiving dinner for this chosen family. As I prepared the meal in my kitchen, now arranged exactly how I wanted it, I reflected on how far I had come. From being relegated to the smallest bedroom in my own home to hosting a celebration of gratitude and abundance, the journey had been challenging but transformative. Looking around my dining table at the faces of people who truly supported me, who had stood by me during the darkest time of my life, I felt a profound sense of peace and belonging. My home was truly mine again, not just legally and physically, but emotionally and spiritually as well. The experience had changed me fundamentally. I was stronger, more confident in setting boundaries, and more discerning about who I allowed into my life. The painful lessons had become the foundation for a more authentic and self-determined existence. 1 year after the eviction, I hosted a personal ceremony in my backyard garden, which had flourished under my renewed care. I wrote letters expressing all the hurt, anger, and disappointment I had experienced, acknowledging these emotions fully before ceremonially burning the letters and releasing their energy. This wasn't about forgiveness in the traditional sense, but about freedom. Freedom from the weight of family expectations and obligations that had never served my well-being. Freedom to create my own definition of home and family. Freedom to live authentically in the space I had created for myself. My home, once a battleground, had become a sanctuary again. And I had become a woman who would never again allow anyone to make me feel like a guest in my own space or my own life. For anyone watching this who might be experiencing similar family dynamics or housing exploitation, know that you have the right to protect your boundaries and your property. Family connections should never be used as weapons of control or manipulation. Your home, whether rented or owned, is your sanctuary, and you deserve to feel safe and respected within its walls. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who overstepped boundaries? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about overcoming family challenges and establishing healthy boundaries. Consider sharing this video with someone who might need to hear that they're not alone in navigating difficult family dynamics. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember that sometimes the most important boundaries we set are with the people closest to us. Until next time, take care of yourself and your space, because both are worth protecting.